Well, I've been putting this out on a, I don't know, daily basis or whatever. And I just thought tonight maybe I would do a little more because there was some conversation about it today. And so I put a few things together. And the first thing I was concerned about is how big this building was. And I looked at the siding, and it looked like that was 9-inch wide. And if that's the case, why there's 16 of them and a half, which would be the 12 foot 6 inches on the one side to the lower part. And then I got thinking about how high the door was. So it can't hardly, if it's only 12 foot 6, the door can't be 14.6. But I don't know how other people measure their buildings when you don't have any kind of a drawing, or you don't have you can't get there to measure it with a measuring rule. So I'd kind of be interested in what other people say about things like this.
Ron, one of the measurements you can use is a standard door behind your left blue arrow. The standard door is either 6'8" or 7'0", and that's pretty much a starting point that you can use.
Yep.
You
Yeah,
could
the
probably
standard entry door, and
indicate
typically
that
3 feet wide.
Yeah, the covering that comes out there, the little weather covering, probably
Awning.
is the same height as the door.
Yes, because the screen door would have to clear it if it opened towards the outside. Yep.
So that'd be yeah.
Let them take it. Yeah.
Hey, Ron,
Yeah.
I'm wondering if using the
That's gotta be hard when you're taken out of the environment you've always known. And your mind is already going, crazy. No.
You also have that construction cone on the side of the building, and those are standard. Stop by any construction site and measure those rings. They're kind of like a meter stick almost.
That's all good thoughts. Notice the roof on this, the roof being just one solid piece there. So here's the next one. Well, maybe there isn't. Let's see here. What's happening here? I can't, there it is. And that's kind of a tumble down one, which that door looks quite a bit smaller, but it's probably the way the angle of the camera is and where I'm at. Notice the difference in the roof.
Yep, and the building is bigger.
Definitely bigger.
Yeah, in contrast to the door, the building is bigger, taller. So.
How about measuring the sidings?
Well, that's what I did back on this one. I just assumed that that was about a 9-inch piece of siding.
Okay.
No, that building's been covered with vinyl clapboard, which you can go to any standard lumber yard and measure it, but it may be up to 12 inches wide. I think 11 is the standard on that. The clapboards underneath look like they're maybe an 8 or 10.
Which would be normal for that old building.
For some clapboards, because you can go as small as 3.5, 4 inches. You can go up as much as the masonite stuff was 8 to 10 inches, 12 inches. So it varies on what, and that building could have been recited 2 times, 3 times through the years, as old as it is. So it's, but I would say that vinyl siding is probably somewhere between 9 and 11 inches without getting up close with a measuring stick of some sort. A better marker might be the concrete footing. I bet the siding is 1 foot above the sidewalk or the driveway, but that's a 1 foot high concrete berm around there because it looks like it's a double pour. So
I kind of go back to that door size being as good as anything also.
yeah, and you'll find 8 foot is going to be probably on the narrow side for something like that, for trucks and equipment to go in and out, so.
But of course, if you're measuring at this side, you gotta measure up here. You can't take that and move it over to and try to equate there, because that's, it's just wouldn't work.
It's going to be the same height, it's just the perspective you're dealing with. Put it in Photoshop, square it up, they'll both be the same height.
Well, that's a
Well,
good
count the siding, the vinyl siding on the side of the building is consistent across the whole face of that building. So count the number of slats to the door. We know the door height. Then you can take and get your slat width and use it anywhere on this face you want to use it.
Is there a standard height for the stop sign in the first picture?
Yes, there is. The stop sign is, sorry, I work with safety stuff. So the stop sign is about 34 inches from edge to edge. The red part is about 30 inches from edge to edge. It is normally mounted minimum of 5 feet from the ground.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed on the second photograph, there's a fire hydrant there, Ron. This
Right.
one, the fire hydrant is 2 feet high. Standard height of a fire hydrant is 2 feet tall.
Oh, you also have a exterior door on that building too, also.
This is a very good picture. I think, Doug, you sent it to me.
Wow, yeah.
Yep,
There's no question it's big enough to hold a boxcar inside,
oh, yes, yep.
which is pretty unusual. I mean, that probably is a very large lumber company.
Yep. Yeah, I remember looking at that and speculating that the boards standing on end over the one side are anywhere between 12 to 16 feet long, based on what else we're seeing in the photo. Because the ladder, look at the ladder there and count the number of rungs, and figure the rungs in that day and age probably were 12 inches apart. So that ladder is a good 14-foot ladder.
I always like this picture because I think most lumber was unloaded on a not directly into the building, but onto a wagon or a truck, and then hauled into the building, because of the long boards. If it was right next to a building, would be very difficult to get it inside the building. So here's a picture of the real vining. And you'll notice that there is a lumber yard there, Harbuck Lumber down there. And it turns out it happens to be right beside the railroad track, because here's the siding right here. So that contradicts what I just said. However, we don't know if they unloaded on the side, and we don't know if they loaded directly into the building. They probably unloaded it beside the building.
Yeah, some lumber yards had doors on the exterior along the siding like that, where this building is pictured. Others, they would just unload in that open area in front of the building and then cart it in, like you say, on a cart or by hand. So.
So here is the other building that they had at Chelsea, Iowa. Chelsea and Vining are like two twin towns. They are about 6 or 7 miles apart. But a lot of people who had businesses in Chelsea also had them in Vining. So you could be sure this building is almost probably exactly like the one in Vining. And I noticed the roofs on these aren't all the same. That's why I said something on the first one where it was just one slant roof. This one appears to be probably 2 different roofs, one higher than the other. Okay, so let's get to the model part of it. See, here's what I have. And you see, I had a lumber shed there. And then I decided that I really wanted to have LP gas, and I bought one of the LP gas platforms to unload. And so where am I going to put it? Well, I don't have a lot of room. It goes right in here. right back in here, you see these two marks, that's track. So this thing is a very thin piece of plaster or styrofoam, and the trees kind of cover things. So I don't have any way to go back behind. It was suggested yesterday that perhaps I could put the building straddling the track, and that isn't really possible. So I always thought this building would make if you cut it in half, it would make a building like I really wanted. And it turns out you can do it. What I should have did though was make it a little wider, because you can see that the height of the walkways limit the size of the door. And had I built that so that a truck could go, between the walkways was at least 8 to 10 feet wide, then I could have made the door any height I wanted to make it. So that was one of the many mistakes I've made. So you see, at one time I did cut that door that big. Of course, unfortunately, you could see all the walkway. So I put it all back together again. And then we talked a lot about it, and the 8-foot door just didn't look right at all. So I decided that I could at least make a 9-foot door, which was about the same width as the side, which made it a little bit more square. But you can see down here at the bottom, if you really look at it, you're looking at the bottom of the walkways. So the door is really kind of a fool me door. The next thing was, where am I going to put it? Because as I said, there's not much room in here, and this is where I want to put the tank. And I want to put the unloading part right in here. Of course, this is water here, and this is a deep valley in here. So I thought, well, maybe I could put a driveway here. That way you could come in here and drive right through it with your small pickup and wouldn't have any problems. You notice this stuff here? That's when you reach over the top of your scenery and your trees fall apart, that's trees.
Just looks like
Now
a
that-
storm came through.
Yeah, I
It
was
did.
gonna say a windstorm.
So I don't know how other people do this. I be interested in what you're thinking. There is a piece of styrofoam in here underneath this roadway, so I didn't have to put all the plaster on it. And then I put a coat of plaster on it. I just happen to like to mix my own plaster. And after I put it on, I always take a paintbrush and I run the paintbrush with a lot of water in them in the same direction that if it had rain on it, it might, it'd run down and could make gullies and stuff, opposed to doing it crosswise. Of course, the roadway, I went with the path of the wheels. So what does other people do? So other people probably don't like to make plaster up.
Yeah, I use a lot of lightweight spackle instead of plaster with styrofoam, foam insulation board, and then fill the cracks in with lightweight spackle. So, and then coat it with a heavy coat of latex paint. I have used they call a product they call sealing texture, which is an additive for latex paint, what gives it that bumpy feeling. I've added that to paint, and that gives me more of a texture surface on top of my bare foam. So, what you're doing is not wrong. There's just many different ways of addressing the same process. So
I've got a couple of go ahead. I got a couple of applications where I mixed plaster with paint dry and then just painted it right on with plaster and the paint. It gave a little texture to the road. I use that on my silo.
You can buy little cans of paint like this at Menards, and I just usually buy the dark brown, and I use that for my glue to put dirt on top of. I just use common old garden dirt after I run it through a strainer. That's my
Yep.
undercoat. I thought I would show you this because of all of the things I broke. I broke
Well, you're
all the
putting-
guardrails.
You're putting in a drive-in movie.
Yeah.
I broke this. Well, the reason I did that is when I was cutting this out with a paint scraper, why the stuff was flying everywhere, and I didn't want to have to clean out my trees.
Ah. Must be a double bill. Look at all the traffic headed into the driveway movie screen.
There you go. Look at the junk on the road.
Yeah.
By the way, if anybody has ever, this is my track tool, the one of these round levels, so you can see any direction that the track is leaning. I think those are a perfect level for track. Now, of course, I could have done it the easy way and let the little people do it, but they didn't seem to want to do it too well.
Yeah.
Looks like the local landfill.
You know, that plaster was about a 1/4 inch thick, and when it gets hard, I want to tell you, I put a lot of water on it in order to soften it up to the point that I could use a paint scraper.
Yeah.
So, okay, I found a nice piece of masonite and I fit it in there, and then of course there's gaps between the masonite and the original plaster. So the way I do it is I just fold a piece of aluminum foil around the edge of the piece of masonite, and then I just plaster it back in again.
Mhm.
Next time you need to remove plaster, mix a little vinegar in the water.
I had never heard that.
It'll turn it to mush.
Well, okay, so you saw this the other day. Here was what happened. Here's the original piece. And this is where the lumber house shed was going to go. But see my problem? This is
Mhm.
should not be this way. I should have measured before I cut. So now I either am going to have to cut this off, but what I probably will have to do is make a whole new piece because there's another problem. Because the lumber shed cannot sit here because this is occupied. So here's the masonite. There's no masonite underneath this. And the reason I really wanted a lift out is that you can do better detailing on the workbench than you can on the layout, especially when you got to lean over everything that you're working on. So anyway, the grass has been put in, and there is a tube here for running out the drain tube. There's a new one here. There's a new one there. So I use copper tubing to make those drain tubes, and there's probably other ways to make them so they look like corrugated tubes. Here you can see the track going behind, how there really isn't room to do anything behind it.
Hey,
That is
Ron.
it. That's it.
Hey, Ron.
Yeah.
Just if you go back to one photograph, I've just had a thought about your propane tank. What happens if you have a propane tank on a frame that's over your on that slope there, right? If you rotate it downwards, such as it almost to
Well,
the
what
left
I'm
of
going to,
it.
yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I have a propane tank that Walther's made. I'm going to cut it in half. And I think if I've got to go to the trouble of making a whole new base, the problem was when I made this base, I cut it just about right. You can see about where I cut it. You see where I cut it here?
Mhm.
Problem is the tank is actually going to have part of it over here. It's going to set right like this.
Mm-hmm.
Platform is going to be right here. So I suspect if I got to go to all this trouble, I'll be right back there with the paint scraper, cutting out a bunch more plaster and make it bigger. So maybe there was some maybe the mistake I made really is going to be better.
Sure, you can try the vinegar now and see if it works and report back to us.
I will do that. I will do that. Okay, that'll be mine for right now. I'll do another if we need it.
Very
All I gotta do
good.
is figure out how to get out of here.
Yeah, I can help you with that. Doug, would you like to go next?
Sure, I could. Let me see if I can.
Well, Doug's looking for his slide. I'll make a comment. I use a 50-50 mix of hydrocal and sawdust, and that gives you a non-smooth surface, which is a little better for taking paint and whatnot and scenery materials.
The thing is with hydrocal is you pay a lot for it. It's really the same thing as plaster.
I thought it was a little harder.
Well, I'll tell you, I guess it is, but plaster gets hard enough for me.
Well,
Okay,
the 50-50 with sawdust would work with a plaster too.
I'm sure it would.
Can
How
you
about
see this?
Have you ever worked with dental stone? That really gets hard as a rock.
Lloyd Miller, how many of you guys remember Lloyd?
I don't know him.
Okay, he wrote an article in Model Railroader on the Empire Valley in Western, and it was a fantasy line that our club has actually built, and we are on one section of it. Anyway, he bought us 2 50-pound bags of dental stone, and that's what we did our mountains with. And you just have no idea of what true rock is on a layout until you use dental stone.
I'm sure that's right.
Oh
Plaster
my
Paris
God.
is pretty hard too.
Oh,
I made a bridge, a concrete bridge out of that. I made a mold, and boy, I'll tell you, that stuff was hard as a rock. Ooh.
yeah.
And the nice thing about it was it held the detail perfectly. You know, it got all the texture of the wood, you know, like the wooden mold and, you know, like the boards that made the mold. So I bought a 50-pound bag for my dentist, and Laverne, his secretary, thought I was nuts. What in the world would you want that for? I tried to explain it, and she had her mind made up.
Okay, can you see that photo of a farm scene with a rail?
Yep.
Okay, this is a corner of my layout that I'm in the process of reworking, and you can see where I've literally have cut through the corner on the back side of the trestle here. Thought I would move the trestle back to line up with the track over here on the right. And then I came to my realization the trestle was built on a 60 radius curve. I'm now putting in about a 32-inch radius curve. So I'm having to rework all this, and let me, so here's what I've done is I've removed the trestle. You can see I left some pilings in the river itself, and I'm going to reroute the line there. I had a little ravine over here on the other side of where the road is. We're going to come up the ravine. Of course, the other thing is I've lowered some of the layout, so suddenly I got this jump off here I'm having to deal with. But you can see where I've started to cut through the scenery on this side. I've already painted it where the curve will come around out of that ravine. And here you can see where I'm starting to bend track. I'm playing with where the trestle is going to be coming up through the ravine. Starting to, like I said, I use foam, and then I use lightweight spackle. I've filled in the gap back here. I cut this corner out of that scenery and raised it 2 inches so it matches back up with this line. So that gives you a picture there what's happening. Here's a little bit more of a close-up. You can see this is the old road bed that was raised. Now we're down almost 2 inches coming through this ravine. And I'll deal with something here a little bit later. But yeah, I'm starting to curve the curve. This is a roadway here, so I'm going to have to do an underpass of some sort for those vehicles. Here's another shot of where I'm going to be putting the trestle, and I'll be I'll be doing wood pilings again. I just like the looks of that. And this was taken this morning. I started filling in the shapes here a little bit, and I just painted everything with my brown paint to hide the white. So you can see how this is now developing. I just got to get the curve laid in there correctly, and this will be the new approach into my Marshalltown Peninsula. So, but I just wanted to show you. I know I've been posting these photos on Facebook. This photo is not been yet seen, so you are the very first to see it of what's going on in my basement. And that's
Right.
it.
That looks good. Coming along.
It's coming along. Yeah. If I didn't have these distractions like anniversaries and laundry equipment, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I will show you what I've been up to. Let's see here. All right. I think you can see that, right?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
It's the share button screen.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
All right. So just for those who haven't seen any of my layout before, I'm modeling the Chicago Northwestern and Milwaukee Road in 1963 in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan from Iron Mountain to Escanaba. And what I'm showing here is where in Escanaba, there's a big ore dock, or there used to be. And in 1963, it was going strong. And so this is what I was doing in, I think in December, late December or January, which is trying to figure out how I would control the turnouts on the approach to the ore dock itself. So this still looks like this in my basement, and it's two remote Tortoise mounts that are on the end of the ore yard that leads to the ore dock. And so you can kind of see down here, there's a bunch of pieces of the ore dock. The ore dock will butt right up to this piece of plywood. And I think the next picture, so this is the ore dock being worked on. It's upside down on a table right now. And I'll show you a little later, but I've run electrical buses down the length of the ore dock for both track and also LED lighting. And these are the remote actuators. If you've worked with those on Tortoises before, these look familiar. So this is like a choke wire that comes through here and moves this little lever in order to operate the turnout. So rather than have this sticking out, I built a little enclosure out of parts from the ore dock that I don't need anymore. And of course, this is real shiny right now, but I painted it again. And this will, when it's right side up, there'll be some additional stanchions out of the kit that I'm using. I had the ore dock that I'm building is 5 kits, well, 4.5 kits or so worth. And I think there's a picture here where you get a better idea of how long it is. It's still not large enough to really be accurate by a long shot, but it's pretty large for a HO layout, I guess. But anyway, so this will hopefully look kind of normal when I'm done. The other thing is the light poles in the Walther's ore dock model. I've never seen light poles on anybody's model. In fact, they include them in the kit, but the instructions don't really say anything more than, well, put them on the deck. And you can see at the bottom of the poles there's a little dimple that's supposed to go into a hole somewhere, but that hole is not drilled anywhere. So that's just up to you to figure out how you want to do that. The light poles are not perfectly accurate to the prototype, but they're close. And so Tom Stathis, who many of you know, is a guy who's very expert with working with LEDs. And he was over here in September and saw the layout and saw how far I'd come on the ore dock. And he said, well, we really should light that up. So he helped design this design that we're using to do it. And this is just a picture of the box full of light poles as we got started trying to do this. So you can see there's LEDs that go out to the pole. I've got some other detailed photos. but we had to figure out what to do with these wires that'll go down below the deck. And so there's this little channel along here. And so we'll get to a little more on that. This is a picture of the dock with these buses going down the edge. These pieces of the deck, they're meant to be glued in, and then the previous owner or builder of this dock, a guy named Dwayne, I think Ron knows him. I can't think of his last name.
Yeah. Paul.
Okay, yeah. So Dwayne had these rails going all the way down. I want to be able to get in here and maintain this if something goes wrong. So I've put the rail on each of these panels so that they're removable, and they will snap into this bus. So both the track and then the lights, there'll be about 2 lights for each of these panels, and they'll be spaced out. And I think I've got 18 lights so there'll be 9 on each side. But that's what I've been up to. So with these lights, what we're doing is drilling 2 holes in the top of the light shade to get the wires through. And then when I tested them here, we've got these bright lights shining up through the top of the shade. So what are we going to do about that? Well, Lester did a clinic once a while back where he told us about sprue goo. So what this is a little paint bottle full of MEK, and I put a bunch of sprue pieces in there and left them overnight, and then filled in those. So there's still a little light coming through there, but we'll be able to live with that, I think. So that's a major improvement. The other thing with the dock is there's 48 of these chutes, and so
what about painting the top of the shade black?
Yeah, that's a possibility too. That'd probably help. I think the material is so thin there is why it's still showing through a little bit. But yeah, that's a good idea too.
Yeah, a coat of paint or 2 would really help. Yep.
Yeah, what I've done so far, and I know these are a little out of order, but I think I've got a picture in a second here. These are kind of in the order that I actually worked on, because as you guys know, you get so far and then you're waiting on a part to be ordered or something like that. And so you move on to something else. So this is actually when I got that far with the lights, I decided what I wanted to do was use half-round styrene to fill that channel once the wire was in there, so it'd look a little neater. And then it took a while for that half-round to come to the hobby shop. So I started working on these chutes. And the problem is these chutes have a little fragile little nub on each side down here where they attach to the dock. And so about half of them were broken. And you can fix that with a little piece of piano wire or something. But it turned out I had exactly 48 of them between the kit that I had and the stuff that I bought from Dwayne. And so you can see the old ones are a little darker plastic than the new ones, but I have 48 of them here that will actually work. These were drying after being washed. And of course, they've got these little mold marks everywhere, and these are going to be displayed in the up position. So and this is also going to be a very prominent feature of the layout. So I didn't want to have everybody looking at these mold marks. I don't know if anybody else would notice them, but they bothered me. So I sanded them all down with a file, and then painted them. And I scuffed everything up so that'll look a little better when I get done weathering it. And so they look a lot better now. 48 of them. I had a little process, a little assembly line process going. So I think it took me about 3 weeks to get them all sanded, painted, and dried and ready to go. Now they're sitting in a box ready for the next thing. This is that styrene, half-round styrene now covering that channel, and the wires coming out the bottom. You can see the wire up here is twisted up, and I used Walder's goo just to kind of keep that in place. And then there's a little LED light sitting inside there. So these are painted with gray primer now, and then I've got some silver paint that I'm going to use on there. And I like that idea. If I don't like the way the light appears when I'm done putting that paint on there, then I may just paint those maybe dark green or black and see if that doesn't help.
Where are the shades from?
They're part of the kit.
Oh,
Yeah. So we just drilled 2 holes. What we did is I had a little attachment for the Dremel where there was actually like a bulb that came out down here, or part of the fixture that came down. So I ground that out and created a cavity in there. And then I drilled 2 holes on each side to take the positive and the negative wire, and then twisted those, and then cut a little hole here so that I could get the wire into that channel. And on
next
down.
time you do this, I'll give you the source for some nice stamped brass lampshades.
Okay.
That they're wonderful because you don't have to do all that work.
Yeah, that sounds good. So then the next thing, while that paint was drying, is I got to framing the last part of the layout. So there's a heater over here. You can see the exhaust from the heater going here. And the way my layout works is we're facing, I guess, the west wall of the house. Everything is behind me. And there's this little alcove here that I framed. I used 2x2s here to try to save space because this is kind of a narrow area. And this business up here was real tricky to get around this I-beam that goes the length of the house and give me something to screw the drywall onto. But I managed to get that done during spring break. So this actually looks a little better now. I've got the metal corner bead on these exposed corners up here. And this is ready to go. There's a hole here that leads under the staircase, which I'll show you some more detail there. And then there's a hole over here that leads back behind all of this, that allows the trains to get from the main part of the layout back behind these heaters, the water heaters back here, the regular heater, then under the staircase. And then over here is the laundry room, which I've been building this layout now for 7 or 8 years, and always wondering what I was going to do when I got to the laundry room. So I've had lots of time to stew on it. And the first part of the layout, I used what is the Planet something or other, whatever it is, the railroad planning software, and I got all into it. And since I've gotten more experience now, I don't use anything like that. I just go nuts. So anyway, what I'm going to do here, I really wanted to put an engine facility in here, but there's not enough room for the turntable. So this is going to be a different industry. Now the ore dock is over here to the left. And so I may do something here where maybe it's a coal dock, which they did have in Escanaba. So this would be another water scene, or they also had a tie plant in Escanaba. So this might become a tie plant. But anyway, one of the lines is going to come across here, and there'll be a deck here, and then there'll be whatever industry it is will be down this wall, and there'll be just enough room for an operator to stand here and be able to work that industry, whatever it turns out to be. So, and this up here on the I-beam is my old Tyco train set from probably about 1967 or something like that I got for Christmas. So. That's just, they all have horn hook couplers and they're pretty ugly, but it gives me solace to see that there all the time. So this is behind that wall. This is what it looks like. And you can see this is pretty tricky. This area is lit for if there's ever trouble. And right now while I'm working on it, but this normally will not be lit up. It'll be dark back here. And in fact, I'm going to paint this all black so that when you're looking through the little holes in the layout where the trains come through, you'll just see black behind the hole. But what I've got here are 2x2s that are screwed into the cinder block. And then actually, no, here there are shelf brackets. You can see one of them coming down here. And on the shelf brackets, I screwed 2x2s onto that. And so I've got a line that comes down from the higher line on the layout, down this piece of this side of the plywood, and the other side of the plywood goes down to the lower level. This up here is the line that goes out to the ore dock. So there's an opening here that goes out to the layout on that side of the room. And then this here is another, there's actually 4 lines coming around this bend. One goes to the ore line. This one comes off the lower level and then does an S curve through here. And that's the line that comes out in that area where I just showed you, where I just completed the drywall. And then this now has been completed where this line will come down here, and everything, these 2 lines that are coming back into the laundry room, including this line that curves around here, all wind up at this same level, which is about 59 inches off the ground.
I have a
So-
question.
Sure.
When you have to replace that water heater, how are you going to do it?
There's the panel over here on the left of where we're looking now. There's a removable plywood panel there, so it'll come out over there. And that the last time I did an update, I showed that, but that's actually screwed in to the wall with bolts, so it comes out. It also allows me to get in here and do any maintenance if anything happens on this track. But I can get in underneath here too. I did have a guy when this piece wasn't here yet, but this wall was up, and the element down here that senses whether the heater's working or not failed. And so I did have a maintenance guy come out, and he walked through here and got his work done, and he thought it was kind of cool. So hopefully I get the same guy next time if I need service.
Greg, I have a question. How are you going to install the track on that? It looks very narrow to.
It's just wide enough that I can fit. So I've got some pictures coming up here, I think, where you can see, but it's just wide enough. I can't gain any weight, Rod. So
Okay.
yeah, that's my diet plan. Is if I gain too much weight, I can't get in here anymore. That'll be trouble.
I thought this was just a homework assignment for some of your students.
That's right. That's right. So let's see what do we got here. So now this is on. So here's those steps we were looking at, and this is the other side of the laundry room. So originally, there's a washer and dryer over here to the right of the sink that you can barely see. And then all the way behind where I'm standing taking this picture, right behind me is my paint booth. And so originally I thought, well, I'll run this whole line all the way to that paint booth and loop around the paint booth and build an access so that a drop bridge or something like that, so I can get to the washing machine and dryer. And as I got in here, I thought, I'm only going to gain about maybe 3 feet by doing that. So I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. The railroad is going to actually end here. These L girders that you see going down here to the right of the sink, this is going to be staging. And at this point, I think this is plywood sitting here that I had cut. I was just testing everything out. So there's an area under here, under the stairs, where that line that S curves around is going to come through here. This is where the track will loop back onto the layout, but then there'll also be staging going down back here. There'll be 8 tracks of staging. There's 8 tracks of staging at the other end of the layout too. So we've got a good amount of staging on this layout. And then this back here is where my beloved engine facility that I've been hoping for is going to go. It'll be a little cramped, but you'll be able to get to it. There's room for the turntable, and so it should be good. And then what I'm really trying to figure out is if I can make this into a Y. So I've got track coming down here. It doesn't really go far enough down here yet. And I have some more room here, but I want to back beyond the sink is where the water meter is and the electrical panel and things like that. So I don't want to make it real hard to get to that stuff. So I've left that kind of open, but I'm really hoping I'll be able to get a Y out of this to be able to turn trains down here.
CFW have a lot of Ys. They have
You could put the leg of the Y in front of the panel and meter on like a hinge, where you
Yeah.
just swing it out of the way, And then
Yeah.
for an op session, just swing it in place, lock it in place, and it's there.
Right. Yeah, that's a thought. So anyway, this is, so you can kind of see what I'm up to with bench work here. This is pretty current. This is probably, I think this is where what I'd prepared for last week ended. So this is about where I was last Thursday. And I've been making progress. So you know how that is. You get encouraged and you keep going. This is just showing one of my plywood joints. I'm using 1/2-inch plywood. These are 1x3s, I think. And then the L girders are 1x4s with a 1x whatever that is,
1x2.
1x2, yeah, across the top. This is, I'm making a transition here, and this is actually, so Rod, this is back by that water heater, and you can see here I'd started sanding this, but I've got the milled Homosote that you can buy from California, whatever it is. And then this is just the stuff from Menards that's a 1/2-inch thick. So I'm using one of those Sureform rasps to just take that down so that we get a nice smooth edge there. And if you've worked with Homosote, you know that gets real messy. So, but actually this worked out, and I think it'll be okay. But this, I'm actually standing now right in front of that area that looks like it's so hard to get to. And it is hard to get to, but you know, I get into my yoga pose and just kind of snake my way back there, and it works. This is that area under the stairs. So these are the openings that lead out to the engine facility. And then this is this industry to be named later that is in the new little alcove that I finished. So I snuck these file cabinets underneath the staircase, and they've got a lot of railroad stuff, track profiles and whatnot that I've acquired over the years. And so this is kind of the process here. These stairs can be kind of messy. There's dirt coming down through the little openings here. So I took a couple of pieces of 1/4-inch plywood and just covered that up. And then here I went away from L girder because I don't have a lot of room here. So I just made a little box, and there'll be a piece of plywood go over that. And then I think I'm going to try to figure out whether I think what I'm going to do is the plywood top over here in the engine facility, I'll extend that into here a little bit. And then the stuff that comes out here, I'll extend in here, and then I'll be able to get at this and make sure the base for the track is real smooth in here, and get that done. Here's my kids and my dog. You can see they're looking on. But anyway, I think, this is actually what I did last night. So now I've roughed in, these are not screwed in yet, but I'm basically, you can kind of see this is going to curve this. You come into the room down here off the stairs, and this will curve around. It'll be nice and wide here for the turntable. Then it kind of goes in to give you room to get in here. There's a duct under here to get into that area that I was just showing by the staircase. And you normally wouldn't need to be in there unless you're doing some maintenance or looking for something. And then it comes out here and interfaces with this area that is the staging. So I think that's it. That's all I got.
Looks like it's coming along. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yes, I'm looking forward to getting track down there, and I'll actually be able to run trains continuously as soon as I put a little more Homosote and track down. So good fun.
Instead of shaving down your 1/2-inch Homosote, did you think about putting a shim underneath the Homobed track?
Yeah, I've done that other places. That particular stuff that I was using there is the stuff that is meant for curve, so it's a little flimsy. And so I just figured this would be easy, and it was pretty easy. I got a sore arm for about 10 minutes. That was it.
I do the same thing, shaping my styrofoam, foam bed. But I've got some of the Homobed too. If I need to hand lay track on top of my foam, I find the Homobed is really good for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I like that stuff. Yeah. The milled stuff is great. I bought a bunch of the stuff at Menards. And so a lot of what I did in these photos, as far as lumber and everything, was stuff that I had laying around. I was trying to get rid of it because I'm pretty much, once I get this track down in that last industry in that alcove, I'm done with bench work and track for a while. So I'm trying to get rid of what I got so I don't store it for the rest of my life, which I have a tendency to do.
I made a problem for myself not long ago.
What's
Yeah,
that?
I created a problem for myself, and I put the glue down to glue the individual ties down, and I put too much glue down. So I tried to spike the rail. The glue was too hard to get the spike through.
All right. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, when you're bending spikes going through a wood tie, you know you did something wrong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned that real quick, and I just now put a little bit of right in the middle of where the track is
Yeah, good idea.
instead of full width.
Yeah, and you use the white glue instead of the yellow carpenter's glue.
Yes.
Greg, one of the things I do when I'm working on that dust creating stuff is I anchor the hose for my shop back right where I'm working. So it sucks it creates a negative pressure zone. And not only limits the distribution of crud, but it also saves that stuff going toward your mouth and
Yeah.
nose.
Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering.
But
I don't think that
If
stuff's-
you anchor the hose near where you're working, it works phenomenally.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good.
Until my son graduated from high school, he was my vacuum operator when I was sanding and home. So a little further over here, Eric. Joking.
Yeah. Well, my job in high school, I had a job as a high school kid working at a canoe and kayak shop, and we actually did a lot of fiberglass work, including building these racing kayaks, which were real tiny. And the only one of us who could get inside there to tape the seam was me. So I was in there breathing in that fiberglass. They were actually made out of Kevlar. So yeah, I think that probably explains a lot of subsequent developments in my life. Breathing all those toxic fumes probably was a determinant in my future. But here we are. So anyway, it looks like it's 7:30. So Ron, maybe we'll save yours for the next week.
Yeah, maybe we'll get somebody else. Mine can be saved for wherever we need it.
Right on. All right, that sounds good. Well, thanks everybody.
We're good.
And
Thank you.
we'll see you guys again next week. Have a nice Thursday.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.